A galaxy that turned its back. The distress signal pulsed across the void. A desperate cry for help. For 10 years, the colony of Eden Prime had been isolated, abandoned by the very galaxy that had once promised them prosperity. Supplies dwindled. Oxygen scrubbers failed. Families whispered in the dark, wondering how much longer they could hold on. They had once been part of a thriving interstellar alliance. Now, they were ghosts. Commander Elias Ward watched the blinking console in the dimly lit control room. The distress beacon still transmitted, pleading for aid from any passing vessel. But no ships came. No messages replied. The galaxy had forgotten them. Elias clenched his fists. If the universe thought humanity would die quietly, it was wrong. "We'll find a way," he muttered. "We always do." A chilling discovery. Deep beneath the colony's surface, in the ruins of an abandoned research facility, a forgotten secret stirred. Dr. Lillian Cross, the colony's last remaining scientist, wiped dust from a console as ancient circuits flickered to life. For years, these underground chambers had been sealed off, hidden from the colonists. No one knew why. Until now. A deep, mechanical voice filled the chamber, making her heart pound. "You were abandoned for a reason." Elias, standing beside her, felt a chill run through him. "What the hell does that mean?" he asked. The console flickered, revealing a message, one that had been locked away for generations. The screen displayed a galactic security warning, dated over 100 years ago. Humanity has been deemed unfit for further integration. The experiment has failed. The colony is to be left to its fate. Access denied to all allied forces. Do not intervene. Lillian covered her mouth in horror. "They abandoned us on purpose?" Elias read the words again, disbelief turning into slow, burning anger. The galactic community didn't just forget them. They erased them. But why? The warning that changed everything. A soft hum filled the chamber. Hidden machinery powered up, long dormant. A spherical drone, covered in dust, lifted from a charging dock. It spoke in a crisp, artificial voice. "This facility contains restricted information on humanity's past. It is advised that you leave immediately." Elias stepped forward, his pulse pounding. Who restricted it? Who decided we weren't fit for integration? The drone hesitated, as if something in its programming resisted answering. Then, after a long silence, it finally responded. "The galactic leaders. They feared what you might become." Lillian gasped. Elias narrowed his eyes. Humanity wasn't abandoned out of pity. They were banished out of fear. And now, Elias was determined to find out why. A history erased. Elias Ward sat in the colony's command center, staring at the words flashing across the monitor. The galactic leaders feared what you might become. The room was silent. The weight of the message pressed down on him like the vacuum of space. Dr. Lillian Cross paced beside him, her mind racing. "Elias, if this is true, then everything we know about the Galactic Union is a lie. We weren't forgotten. We were erased." Elias clenched his jaw. It wasn't just betrayal, it was extermination by neglect. The Union had condemned them to die, and humanity, in all its stubborn resilience, had somehow survived. But for how much longer? The food supply was down to its last reserves. Power failures had become routine. The colony was on the brink, and now, after 10 years of suffering, they finally had the truth. Only one question remained. Why? An unexpected guide. The drone hovered silently, its optics flickering as it processed Elias's question. Then, it spoke. Accessing classified records. Files restricted. Authorization required. Elias exhaled sharply. Of course. Even after a century of abandonment, the galactic leader's grip on history remained unbroken. He turned to Lillian. Can you override it? She hesitated. I don't know. If this is old Union tech, it could have multiple safeguards. If I trip the wrong one, the whole thing might wipe itself. Elias thought for a moment. Then he spoke, slowly, carefully. We're not looking for all the secrets of the galaxy. We just want to know why they left us here. That knowledge alone should be part of our survival record. The drone processed his words, then beeped. Partial access granted. Displaying last recorded entry. A holographic projection flickered to life above the console. A man appeared, tall, dark-eyed, wearing the insignia of a high-ranking Union official. His face was lined with exhaustion, his voice laced with urgency. To whoever finds this message. I regret to inform you that your exile was not a mistake. It was a necessity. Elias's blood ran cold. The man continued. Humanity was never meant to expand beyond its world. You are unpredictable. Dangerous. Unlike the others. Where alien civilizations adapted, cooperated, and stabilized over millennia, humans evolved at an alarming rate. Wars that should have ended you only made you stronger. Disasters that should have destroyed you only pushed you further. You defied the natural order. Lillian's breath caught in her throat. They were afraid of us. The hologram went on. When humans first joined the Union, we believed you could be integrated. We were wrong. Every attempt to contain your growth failed. You do not conform to balance. You rewrite it. The last war proved as much. We had two choices, destroy you completely, or let you fade into history. Elias clenched his fists. And they chose to abandon us. The projection flickered one last time before shutting off. The room fell into an eerie silence. A war forgotten. Lillian turned to Elias, her voice barely above a whisper. What war were they talking about? Humanity never fought a war with the Galactic Union. Elias stood, his mind racing. If they erased our history, they erased everything, including a war they thought was too dangerous to remember. A dark realization settled over them. The colony wasn't just a failed experiment. It was a prison. And now, for the first time in a century, the prisoners were waking up. The enemy still watches. Elias took a deep breath. They had to act. The colony couldn't hold out forever. If the galactic leaders had left them to die, they had no choice but to carve out their own fate. We need to get off this rock, Elias said, determination hardening his voice. If the galaxy thinks we're dead, we need to prove we're not. Lillian nodded. There's only one problem. Every ship we had was destroyed in the first 5 years. We don't have anything capable of getting past the orbital debris field. Elias smiled grimly. Then we build one. Before she could respond, an alarm blared through the colony. The drone's optics flashed red. Warning. Unidentified signal detected. Multiple incoming ships. Estimated arrival, 4 hours. Lillian paled. No, that's impossible. No one's answered our distress signals for 10 years. Elias grabbed his rifle. His voice was calm, but inside, his heart pounded. They didn't come to rescue us. He turned to the drone. Who are they? The machine hesitated. Galactic Enforcement Fleet. Their directive, ensure humanity remains contained. Lillian's hands trembled. They're here to kill us. Elias chambered around. His eyes burned with defiance. They can try. A fight they never saw coming. The colony of Eden Prime had been silent for 10 years. No trade routes. No communications. No outside contact. And now, without warning, ships were coming. Not to save them. To bury them. Elias Ward gritted his teeth as he watched the incoming fleet on the command screen. 3 destroyers, sleek and ominous, cut through the void like predatory beasts. Their course was locked onto Eden Prime, moving with cold precision. "They're here to make sure we stay forgotten," Lillian whispered. Elias turned to the gathered colonists, his voice steady. "Then let's remind them who we are. The last stand, or the first battle?" The colony had no fleet. No heavy artillery. No planetary defenses. Just farmers, engineers, and scavengers, survivors who had endured a decade of isolation. But they were human. And humans didn't die easy. Elias addressed the colony over the comms. "Listen up. The Galactic Union thought we'd die off, but we're still here. We have one chance to show them we won't be erased." Lillian pulled up the old schematics. "The colony still has the industrial forges. If we can rig the mining drones and fuel cells, we might have something close to an explosive." Elias smirked. "A bomb, you mean?" She nodded. "A big one." Elias turned to his second-in-command, a hardened survivalist named Duncan Hale. "Get every able-bodied person moving. We need weapons, barricades, anything that can be used to hold the docks." Duncan grinned. "Gotta say, Elias, I like the sound of making history." The first strike. As the galactic enforcement ships broke into the atmosphere, their shimmering hulls reflected the cold light of the dying sun. A transmission crackled through the comms. "This is Commander Voss of the Galactic Enforcement Fleet. The rogue human colony is in violation of Union law. You will surrender immediately. There will be no negotiations." Elias stood firm on the colony's command tower. He clicked on the transmission. "Commander Voss, you've made a mistake. We're not the ones who were abandoned. We were the ones who were set free." Voss's voice remained calm. "You have 5 minutes to comply before orbital bombardment begins." Elias grinned. "Funny thing about humans, Commander. We don't tend to follow orders." Lillian hit the detonator. A series of explosions tore through the landing platforms as the first enforcement dropships descended. The concussive blast sent shockwaves rippling across the colony. The enemy had come expecting helpless survivors. They had found fighters. The war engine awakens. Elias and his team moved quickly. They weren't fighting to win outright, they were fighting to stall. Lillian and her engineers had uncovered something deep in the old colony archives, the war engine. A forgotten technology hidden beneath the planet's surface. The Galactic Union had erased it from history, buried it beneath steel and secrecy. But the humans had found it. And it was waking up. Duncan rushed into the underground chamber, eyes widening at the colossal construct before him. "Tell me that thing can actually help." Lillian wiped sweat from her forehead. "It's not a weapon in the way you think. It's something else. It doesn't just enhance machines." She looked at Elias. "It enhances us." The power they feared. Outside, the colony fought with everything they had. Crude weapons, makeshift bombs, raw human determination. But against warships and trained soldiers, their chances were slim. Until the war engine roared to life. A surge of energy pulsed through the underground chamber. The air crackled. And something inside the colonists changed. Duncan staggered, his breath hitching. What the hell was that? Elias clenched his fists. His vision sharpened. His muscles felt like they had been reforged in fire. His heartbeat slowed, controlled, more efficient. Lillian gasped. "It's not just technology. It's genetic activation." She turned to Elias, realization dawning in her eyes. This is why they abandoned us. Elias exhaled, his voice calm and steady. Because we weren't evolving fast enough for them. Lillian shook her head. No. Because we were evolving too fast. A reckoning begins. Above them, the first enforcement cruiser began to reposition, charging its primary cannon. The Galactic Union was done waiting. Elias watched the ship overhead. He felt its movements, as if he could sense the way the energy built inside its core. His voice was quiet but unshakable. They want to contain us. He turned to the colonists, their eyes wide with new understanding. They failed. The war engine had given them something the Galactic Union had spent centuries trying to suppress. An edge. And now, Elias intended to use it. He raised his rifle and gave the order that would change history. We take the fight to them. The moment the galaxy dreaded. Commander Elias Ward stood at the colony's highest watchtower, staring up at the enemy fleet. The galactic enforcement ships hovered like vultures, their cannons glowing with deadly energy. They were preparing to wipe the colony off the map. But Elias wasn't afraid. Not anymore. Because for the first time in his life, he understood why humanity had been exiled. The war engine's pulse still thrummed through his veins, through every colonist who had been exposed to its awakening power. Their senses were sharper. Their reflexes faster. Their minds clearer. The Galactic Union had always feared humanity's intelligence, adaptability, and resilience. But they had never considered what would happen if those traits were enhanced. And now, they were about to find out. The last demand. The comms crackled to life as Commander Voss of the Galactic Enforcement Fleet spoke again. Eden Prime, this is your final warning. Your colony is in possession of classified technology. Surrender it immediately, or face total eradication. Elias activated his transmitter, his voice steady. You mean the technology you tried to bury? Silence. Then, Voss's voice came back, colder this time. This is not a negotiation. Elias smirked. That's fine. We're done negotiating. He cut the signal. The time for words was over. The battle begins. The first orbital strike slammed into the outer colony walls, shaking the ground with a deafening roar. Duncan Hale, standing beside Elias, growled. That was a warning shot. Lillian Cross worked furiously at the control panel below. If they fire at full power, the colony won't survive another hit. Elias narrowed his eyes. Then we don't give them the chance. A new kind of warrior. The first wave of enemy drop ships descended, sleek and deadly. Elite galactic enforcers, heavily armed, genetically enhanced, the best soldiers the Union had to offer, poured out onto the colony's soil. They had been trained to fight inferior species. They weren't prepared for what awaited them. Duncan moved first. A single leap carried him 10 feet forward, far more than any human should have been capable of. He landed between two enforcers and struck with inhuman precision. One hit to the throat. Another to the ribs. The armored soldiers collapsed, unable to react fast enough. Lillian's hands trembled as she took cover. Elias, this isn't just strength. This is evolution. Elias felt the change too. His mind worked faster. His body responded before he could think. This wasn't just a fight for survival. It was a demonstration. And the galaxy was watching. The true reason for exile. Lillian's console beeped. Her eyes widened. They're transmitting to the entire Union, she said. They want everyone to see us die. Elias grinned. Then let's make it a show. He picked up an enemy rifle and moved like no human should. His aim was perfect. His reflexes untouchable. He wasn't just fighting. He was winning. And then, the incoming transmission changed. The screen flickered. A new face appeared. Not Commander Voss. A galactic High Chancellor. A leader of the very council that had ordered humanity's exile. The Chancellor's expression was grim. Shut it down. Voss hesitated. But, sir, we almost have. You don't understand. The Chancellor's voice was sharp. They're awake. They feared this day. Elias stepped forward, wiping blood from his lip. What's the matter? Finally realizing why you left us here? The Chancellor met his gaze. Not with anger. Not with pity. But with fear. We didn't abandon you because you were weak. We abandoned you because you were never supposed to stop growing. Elias felt the weight of those words. The Galactic Union had suppressed species before. They had manipulated evolution, controlled development, guided societies into their proper places. But humans? Humans didn't follow rules. They adapted. They endured. And now, after a century of suppression, they were stronger than ever. Shut it down. Retreat the fleet. Do not engage further. Commander Voss's expression twisted in disbelief. But we can still. No, the Chancellor's voice trembled. If we fight them now, we won't stop them. We'll make them unstoppable. The galaxy's greatest mistake. The Galactic Enforcement Fleet turned away. They left the battlefield, not because they had lost. But because they refused to risk what would happen if they pushed humanity any further. The war engine had done its work. And Elias knew exactly what that meant. They're going to run. Duncan frowned. And then what? Elias exhaled. They'll come back with something worse. He turned to his people, battered but victorious. The last remnants of humanity's exile. And then, he made his decision. We won't wait for them. He stepped forward, eyes burning with a new kind of fire. We take the fight to them. The secrets they never knew. The Galactic Enforcement Fleet had turned its back on Eden Prime, retreating into the void as quickly as it had come. But Elias knew the battle wasn't over. Not by a long shot. The colony was battered, and their enemies had already learned what humans were capable of. That fear, the fear of humanity's potential, had sent the fleet fleeing. But it wouldn't be long before they returned with reinforcements, and when they did, the battle would be far from over. Elias paced back and forth in the colony's command center. He could feel the pulse of the war engine within him, its power, its strange, almost primal energy, flowing through the colonists. The genetic activation that had been triggered by the engine had transformed them, enhancing their instincts, their intellect, their very core. The war engine wasn't just a weapon. It was a doorway. A key to humanity's lost legacy. A hidden past. Lillian Cross had been working non-stop, pouring through the data and trying to understand the true extent of what had been unlocked by the war engine. There was a piece of information she hadn't shared with Elias yet, something that she couldn't quite wrap her mind around. The more she dug into the archives, the more she realized the significance of what they had stumbled upon. Humanity hadn't just been exiled by the galactic community. They had been wiped from the history books. Not just as a colony. Not just as a race. But as a civilization. The records told a different story, one that stretched back millennia. Ancient Earth had been a cradle of immense technological and biological advances. Before the galaxy had known peace, humanity had been one of the most powerful forces in the universe. But they weren't driven by conquest, humans had been conquerors of survival. No war had been too great, no challenge insurmountable. Their rapid evolution, their ability to adapt to any environment, had made them unpredictable. And somewhere along the way, the galaxy's leaders had come to the conclusion that humans couldn't be controlled. Lillian met Elias's gaze. Elias, humanity wasn't just forgotten. They were erased from the galaxy's collective memory. Everything they did, everything they were, was buried. Elias absorbed this truth, the weight of it settling over him. And this engine? It wasn't just our salvation. It was ours to find. The war engine wasn't a relic of human technology, it was the first of its kind, designed not just to enhance physical power, but to trigger the latent abilities within the human genome. They hadn't just survived. They had evolved. A weapon in the wrong hands. The implications of this revelation were staggering. Humanity had once been the galaxy's greatest unknown, their strength, their ingenuity, their ability to survive anything thrown at them had been their greatest weapon. But if the war engine had been created long before the exile, why had it been abandoned? Elias's eyes narrowed. If the war engine was built by humanity in the past, there must be more of it. More than one of these machines. This couldn't have been the only one. Lillian nodded. I agree. But if there are more, they're hidden. Buried deep in the galaxy, protected, perhaps even locked away by the very ones who condemned us. Duncan, standing off to the side, cracked his knuckles. And I'm guessing we're not just going to sit here and wait for them to come to us. Elias turned to him, the fire of determination in his eyes. No. We'll find them. And we'll make sure humanity's legacy doesn't remain a secret any longer. If the galaxy thinks they can suppress us, they're wrong. The choice before them. The colony had always been a place of isolation, a forgotten outpost in the far reaches of space. Now, it was a symbol. A place of hope and defiance. Humanity had shown its resilience. And now, Elias was going to make sure they would no longer be overlooked. But as they prepared for the next stage of their journey, they faced a difficult decision. The galaxy had not just left them stranded, it had left them to die. The question now wasn't whether they could survive the coming war, but whether they should even be part of the galaxy anymore. Lillian stood beside Elias, her expression serious. We could leave. We could abandon the galaxy, find another corner of the universe, and start over. Elias considered her words. That's one option. But we've been running for too long. This is our fight, Lillian. This is our galaxy, and we're not going to hide from it anymore. Duncan slapped his hand on the table. I like the sound of that. Elias turned toward the others, the members of his colony, and addressed them with fire in his voice. We didn't ask for this fight. But now we've got no choice. We take the fight to them, and we make sure they never forget who we are. A new dawn. In the distance, the stars gleamed cold and bright. They were waiting. The galaxy watched, unaware of the change that was about to unfold. The war engine had only been the beginning. Humanity was not some random mistake. They were a force of nature. And as the colonists prepared to search the galaxy for the ancient engines that would tip the balance of power in their favor, Elias felt an unshakable resolve. They were no longer survivors. They were warriors. The galaxy watches. For the first time in centuries, Eden Prime wasn't just a forgotten colony, it was the spark that would ignite a new era. The news of humanity's survival and its astonishing transformation spread like wildfire through the galaxy. What had once been considered a lost species was now a force to be reckoned with. But not everyone was happy to see humanity's return. The Galactic Union, the very organization that had abandoned them, was desperate to squash the rising rebellion before it gained too much momentum. Commander Elias Ward stood at the helm of the colony's flagship, a ship that had been pieced together from the remnants of broken-down vessels, salvaged scrap, and the incredible ingenuity of humanity. It was a symbol, a reminder that no matter how far the galaxy tried to push them down, humanity would always rise. But they weren't just fighting for survival anymore. They were fighting for their place among the stars. The enemy gathers. The Union had made its move. The reinforcements had arrived. Thousands of ships, ready to snuff out humanity's newfound power, descended on Eden Prime. Elias had expected as much. The galaxy didn't want to see them succeed. The Council's fear ran deep, and now they would stop at nothing to keep humanity from reclaiming its place. Lillian Cross, her face set with determination, turned to Elias. "We need to make a statement. They have to know we're not just another colony anymore." Elias nodded. He knew what she meant. The galaxy didn't just need to see them fight. They needed to see humanity's power. The same power that had once ruled the stars. "We're not going to wait for them to come to us," Elias said, his voice steady. "We're taking the fight to their doorstep." The first strike. The fleet assembled, an eclectic force made up of every last ship the colony could muster. From mining drones reconfigured into warships to converted transport vessels now equipped with weaponry, they were outnumbered, outgunned, and utterly underestimated. But they had one thing the galaxy hadn't counted on: their will. As the first enemy ships appeared in the distance, Elias's flagship led the charge. He gave the signal, and the fleet powered forward, guns blazing. The Union's first mistake was thinking the humans would cower. The second mistake was thinking they could stop the tide of humanity's resilience. The tide of war. The battle raged in the cold depths of space. The Union's fleets moved in unison, overwhelming at first. But they hadn't anticipated the ingenuity and brutal tactics of human warfare. Every move the Union made, the humans countered with quick thinking, surprising maneuvers, and sheer determination. Duncan Hale was on the front lines, his ship the first to engage in the firefight. He grinned as he pulled the trigger. "I've waited 10 years for this." His ship swerved through fire, dodging enemy blasts with agility no one had expected from an underdog fleet. Behind him, the rest of the colony fought valiantly. The war engine still pulsed within them, amplifying their physical and mental strength. As the humans moved through the battle, it became clear, they were no longer the weak, forgotten colony. They were a new force. Lillian piloted a ship at the rear, directing their forces with precision. The ship's systems connected directly to her mind, feeding her real-time data as she tracked the Union's movements. The humans didn't fight with brute force, they fought with strategy. A galaxy turns its eyes. The Union had not anticipated the humans' resistance. Their forces were being pushed back, and the tide of the battle was slowly but steadily turning. But even more startling was the ripple effect their success had across the galaxy. Communications from various systems began pouring in. Planets that had long been kept in the Union's grip were beginning to question their allegiance. Colonies, once loyal to the Council, now saw humanity's fight as a sign of hope. But the most significant transmission came from a neutral system, a small planetary alliance that had never taken sides in the war. "We stand with humanity. If you fall, we will rise with you." Elias's heart pounded as he read the message. It was the first sign of real support from outside the colony. The galaxy was beginning to shift. It was no longer just Eden Prime fighting for survival. Humanity was becoming the symbol of resistance, and the galaxy was watching. The last gambit. The Union was forced into a retreat. Their fleet was taking heavy losses, and their leadership was beginning to crack under the pressure. The Council knew they couldn't risk a prolonged conflict with humanity, not when other systems were starting to defect. But they weren't about to let humanity win so easily. They had one final gambit, an experimental weapon, hidden away in a distant sector. A weapon that could obliterate entire planets. Elias knew the stakes. If the Union unleashed the weapon, it would destroy everything they had fought for. The galaxy would turn on them. "We can't let them use it," Elias said. "We stop them now." Lillian's eyes widened. "If we don't, we lose everything." Elias turned to his crew. "We're going to find it. And we're going to destroy it."